What up, y'all? Welcome to the log. Today I'm going to be providing my final thoughts on Clair Obscur Expedition 33 after platinum in the game. Now, the structure of this video is going to be pretty simple. I'm going to do gameplay first, then story, then presentation, trying to mix it up from how I've done this in the past and just get to the meat of it a little bit soon. With that being said, let's go ahead and get right on into the video. Let's start out with gameplay. First, I want to talk about the reaction turn-based combat that they have in the game. And for those of you that don't know what that is, it's pretty much a combat style that's similar to Super Mario RPG, a Paper Mario if you played it, Bug Fables, Sea of Stars, games of that particular ilk, where even though there's a turn order, you still have the opportunity to react to things that the enemy is getting ready to do to you. And in some cases, a lot of those reactions can be caused by you timing the attack that they're about to present to you, which allows you to block. And in some cases, you can counter it. And it all depends on how that system is set up. In this particular case, the system is set up here with a parry, a dodge, and a gradient counter, I think is what it's called. Oh, and a jump. Almost completely forgot about the jump. But you have pretty much those four options, which kind of mixes up the gameplay a little bit. What I will say is for parrying things and for the gradient counter, those two things in particular, I do think that they were poorly designed. It's just what I felt. I think that there were poor cues that were given to the enemies. And then in a lot of cases, it was super zoom out the camera to the point where it'll be difficult to tell when the attack is coming at you, or there'll be a lot of action that's happening. And granted, I know they did it all for thematics, but for me, I like practicality when I play. I want to make, if I mess up, I want to feel like I'm the one that messed up, not that, why did they do that? And that kind of disoriented me, you know what I mean? But I do think they have poor cues. I think they have poor sound cues as well as poor visual cues. In some instances where they do have like both attached, the sound cue would be to alert you, but not be for when you would actually engage in the reaction. It would be the visual cue, and in some cases the visual cue, the frames for it would be like super fast. My way of getting around it was just bursting things down before it even got the chance to perform an action on me. And it's just because the reaction period for a lot of things, it didn't feel good to play, in my opinion. With the next thing I do want to talk about is the mini games. The mini games is pretty much like Only Up, which was a style mini game that they had, a climbing mini game, an obstacle. They had multiple obstacle course mini games, actually, where one was find the correct path. The other one was more so just get through the obstacles that's going to be in your way. Both of which were pretty, they were solid. The Bombs Away joint, though, the Bombs Away one, I don't know what it is with that hit registration. I don't know what it is with like that R1 attack. I don't know if it's because they slowed it down or something like that, or that they wanted it to be rhythmic. Sometimes it felt like R1 wasn't working. But the Only Up one, I would say, was probably the most frustrating one because I played with auto run on. So I had to go into the settings, turn that off because that was kind of screwing me up with that obstacle course. But other than that, they were solid. They were solid additions to the game. The other thing that I want to talk about is the exploration. What I will say about the exploration is that it kind of felt pseudo deep, pseudo big, or however you want to put it, however you want to like splice it. And by that, I mean, you're put into the overworld. Now, the overworld looks massive. It looks like there's a lot of things to do in that overworld. You see a bunch of different zones. However, when you go into some of those zones are entirely atmospheric and they contain like a collectible. So let's say, for example, you go into like one zone, it'll look gorgeous. I think one is like the blade fields or blade battleground or whatever. You'll go into that one and then it'll look amazing, but there'll only be like a record on the ground. You'll go and get the record and come back out. Or there'll be a journal on the ground. You'll go and get the journal, listen to the journal, come back out. And it was a lot of that. There were some other areas that were like way incredible, like Yellow Harvest, Renoir's Drafts, and a bunch of other places that wasn't necessarily story relevant, you know, not like an old Lumière, or Visages or Serene or anything like that. It wouldn't be those type of areas. It would be like, you know, the other side areas and all that. But with all that being said, it felt like they did enough in order for it to seem massive, but it wasn't necessarily massive, if that makes sense. And on top of that, they had like heavy collectathon aspects to it that I thought was amazing because you could collect like journals, of course, different wardrobes, hairstyles, and all that exist within the game. There's a ton of different abilities that you can collect within the game, and a bunch of other stuff that's there, which I thought was spectacular. Now, there were also some puzzles in the game. Now, these puzzles aren't like Hell is Us puzzles. They're not like any game that actually focused on puzzle design. That's not what's here. What's here is like, let's say, for example, there's a puzzle that's in Esoteric Ruins where it's pretty much not necessarily like a trap room, but it's like a find the correct switch. You've probably experienced it if you played like any of the old school Pokemon games and you had to like get through a room to get to like Team Rocket or something like that in Red and Blue. You probably experienced this type of puzzle before, and it's the exact same thing. I thought it was pretty dope. There's also another puzzle that's inside like the painting workshop where it's a parkour puzzle. So you just gotta parkour your way to the person that you need to talk to them, and then parkour your way to the statue, and then you talk to the statue, and then you're good. It's pretty much stuff like that. It's not anything too complex. It's simple, but at least enough that meshes well with the player mechanics, and I thought it was pretty solid. Overall, I would say the gameplay was very passable. I don't think the gameplay was the selling point of this game, at least in my opinion, because I do think that if we just look at other reaction turn-based games, there are better ones that have better systems, in my opinion. But this one, it can stand at least in that genre. In terms of presentation, graphically, I do think that the game isn't necessarily a technical marvel or anything like that. And I just think that it uses what's in front of it, and it does that. That's it. Now, aesthetically, hey, this game can stand on their own. Whoever decided to put two hands for a head and a body, and then that joint got the death lights from it inside it. Yo, you need a raise. That is ingenuity. That is creativity right there, buddy. That is crazy. Every single time I went to the Dark Shore and I saw the noir enemy, oh my god, fantastic. And then a bunch of the other enemies, like, I don't know how to say the snake name that's like floating in the sky, the one that Verso talks about, like that ate him. That design is Sprung, on the other hand, y'all could have worked on that a little bit more. He looks like an unknown that has a body, in my opinion. But everything else, all the other creature designs and all that are fantastic. I want to say this is probably one of the best games out aesthetically. I'll put it in the same category as like a First Berserker Kazan or something like that. Because normally realistic games, they don't really do it for me aesthetically, because people, they tend to just, if you're using realism, you immediately go to things that actually exist in life instead of using your creativity to actually create different creatures. Different things that could potentially exist somewhere else out there in the universe. I like what they did here. Music-wise, I do want to say this. This is one of the best soundtracks I've heard since I played Fury. Fury is hands down one of the best video game soundtracks I've ever experienced in gaming. This is second, or almost second. You know, Snake Eater still, that I give my all, not for honor, but for you. That still rings in my head to this day. Like since 2005 to this day, but still, this is up there. There's one song, like it's in one of the boss fights, because I do D&D with the homies. I said to one of my homies, like, this song needs to be my character's theme song. And it's the one where you're fighting Sprung. So the soundtrack here is top tier. It's gold. If you love music, you're going to love the music in this game. The sound here is pretty solid. What I will say is, just like what I wanted to say for the aesthetic, because in the aesthetic, I was thinking, hey, y'all might want to start making horror games. And I said that throughout my playthrough of this. I was like, yeah, the next game y'all should make should be a horror game. Because there was one time when I had walked into like this cave, and then the walkway gave out and it dropped me in front of like this creature where all I saw was its eyes and a mouth. And I ain't gonna lie to you, I almost screamed. I was playing in a dark room. That J had me, but there was also this other location called the Sinister Cave. The Sinister Cave was kind of wild, bro. Because when I went there, all you would hear is like the wind like crashing against the walls, which was amazing ambient sounds. But you would hear like the wind crashing against the walls, and then the deeper you got into the cave, the darker it got, and to the point where like you got to a point where there was these crystals and it started to light up the cave a little bit. I was like, yeah, I got the record and got up out of there. I ain't gonna hold y'all. The sound of this game was amazing. Amazing too. Now, as for performance, I did experience a bunch of frame drops. I experienced some bad pop-ins, but other than that, the game never crashed on me once. That's more than I can say for any other game that I've played on my PS5. Like, games have been crashing on me on my PS5 for some reason, making me think my PS5 is the problem. But other than that, this game hasn't crashed not once. Frame drops here, bad pop-ins there, but other than that, the game never crashed. Therefore, you get claps in my book for that. Lastly, let's get to the story, because that's why y'all really here, right? The story. You want to hear what people think of the story. You could take this however you want. I think this is peak CW. For those of you that don't know what CW is, CW used to be Warner Brothers Television. Now, I think they sold it. When I'm saying peak CW is, I mean, this is peak Vampire Diaries. This is Vampire Diaries when Klaus Michelson popped up. Nicholas, oh, no, because they called him Niklaus. Elijah, Rebecca, like the originals popped up in that joint. And, you know, they was trying to get away from their dad. That's what this reminded me of. It was smooth reminded me of peak Vampire Diaries, and that the plot seemed to be one in one with that arc. Again, take it with a grain of salt. Feel how you feel, how I'm saying this. But I swear, the deeper I got into the story, the more it reminded me of Vampire Diaries. And with that being said, I think the story is amazing. I think the story also has like a bit of a meta element to it as well. It seemed as though, since these developers were individuals that used to work for Ubisoft, it seemed like they was talking with Ubisoft about how bigger corporations could potentially devalue the artistic factor of video games, and how they bastardize it and they take the soul out of it and stripping it into something that becomes essenceless, I guess is the best way that I could put it. But it did seem like there was a higher meta value behind it, outside of just how one grieves and how the grief can consume you. It also seemed like there was more so a consumption value there, in terms of how an art can be bastardized and then turned into this thing that it wasn't originally supposed to be. I think there's a lot of things that you can potentially interpret from this game, from the story, but that was one of the key things that I got, especially when you would hear like two characters in particular talk. I'm not going to get into details, not going to spoil anything, but it really seemed like they put their heart and soul into this, especially after leaving a company like Ubisoft. Now, what I will say is there were some Ubisoft-isms in this story. For those of you that beat it, you know what I mean. And if you don't know what I mean, Animus. That's all I'm gonna say. Once that thing happened, I was like, oh, this is the anime. That was just me. I don't know if anybody else thought the same thing, but that was just me. But other than that, that doesn't devalue the product that is the story. That doesn't devalue anything else. I thought it was amazing. 20 out of 10. Oh, one of the best. And normally I don't care about stories like that in games. Like, you gotta make me care. This made me care. This made me care. This is a 20 out of 10. 100 out of 10 if I could give it 100 out of 10. Either way, it was amazing. I had a blast playing this joint. And I will say that it helped me get over a lot of the issues, which normally games can't do. Like, if your gameplay it ain't clicking with me, like, sometimes I'll drop that joint and I'll go play something else, because, you know, there's thousands of other games out there. But in this case, I was like, you know what? The combat is passable. I'll keep playing. It's passable. I can keep playing. Let me just go ahead and keep playing and enjoy what they're trying to offer me. With that, I'm glad I did. In all, I do think this is an amazing game that I won't say everyone needs to experience, but I will say if you're a big fan of narrative-based games, or games that have interesting and intricate stories that are being told in them, you shouldn't be skipping out on this game this year. Now, I will say this, if you are a gameplay first individual and you love gameplay, but you also love tactics, this could be for you too. I will say that this could be for you. But what I will also say is, there's a certain type of individual that has to like that type of gameplay. If you love wars of attrition, this is for you. If you don't like that, like myself, this might not be for you. Now, you could put it on story mode, but you're going to feel like a bambino. You don't want to feel like a bambino. So, with that being said, I would say approach it with a grain of salt. Maybe watch some YouTube videos on it or something and see if it's for you. But other than that, the way I look at it is I'm glad that I played this. Even with all the issues that I've had with the combat itself, I'm glad that I played it. Exploration was good enough. Combat was good enough. All the ancillary stuff that existed outside of the game was good enough. That overworld looked gorgeous, especially like after you did a particular quest line and you repainted, the monolith. I thought that was pretty clever. There's a lot of clever things that's done in this that I think is worth a shot, regardless of who you are. But let me know what you all think in the comment section down below. And until next time I catch y'all, deuces.